Look deep into the bagel. Recently, I watched the film Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I loved it. I thought it was so original, so beautiful, and I wanted to create a craft inspired by this movie, so I'm going to attempt to recreate the black hole bagel from the movie. I've never made this recipe before, but I have made the recipe that it's based off of, and it does make good bagels. So fingers crossed that at the end of the day, I will have an exquisite, goth, everything bagel. To start, I'm going to mix 4½ teaspoons of molasses into ½ a cup of warm water. Next, I'll add 2 teaspoons of dry active yeast, stirring a little bit just to make sure all the yeast is in the water. While the yeast is activating, I'm going to mix a tablespoon of black cocoa powder and 3½ cups of bread flour. I promise the cocoa powder won't make the bagels taste like chocolate. Like the molasses, it's just there to help darken the dough. Next, I'm adding 1½ teaspoons of salt around the outside of the flour so that it doesn't immediately kill the yeast when I add it to the center of the bowl. Once you've added the yeast mixture, you can start the stand mixer at this point and add an additional 1/3 cup of water. If you're mixing by hand, add the 1/3 cup of water before mixing. After you've mixed it a bit, add the rest of the water, just under a ½ cup or 100 milliliters. Mix this until everything forms into one ball of dough. If your dough is too dry, you can add a little bit more liquid. If it's too wet, you can add a little more flour. I started to knead the dough in the stand mixer, but it wasn't working well, so I decided it would be easier just to do it by hand. Knead the dough until it's smooth and elastic for about 10 to 15 minutes. Let the dough rise in a covered grease bowl for at least an hour or until doubled in size. While you wait, you can make the Everything Bagel spice blend. I wanted to keep the seasoning as dark as possible, so I used 1½ tablespoons of poppy seeds, 3 tablespoons of black sesame seeds, 1 tablespoon of dried black garlic flakes, and 1 tablespoon of black volcanic salt flakes. After an hour, punch down the dough, cover it again, and let it rest for 10 minutes. Then divide the dough into 8 equal pieces, shaping each into a ball, and then making a hole in the center to stretch the dough into a bagel shape. The bagels will puff out, so I'm going to make the center hole a bit bigger than what I want the final bagel to be. Arrange the bagels on a parchment-lined sheet pan, cover with a damp towel, and let them rest for another 10 minutes. During this time, bring a pot of water to a boil and preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. After the bagels have rested, turn the pot of water down to a gentle simmer and add a few bagels, keeping the good side face down in the water. After a minute, flip them over and simmer for an additional minute. Retrieve your bagels with a slotted spoon or spatula and place them back on your parchment-lined sheet pan. Repeat this process for all bagels. To try to get my dough even darker, I mixed powdered black food dye with a wash of egg whites and water to paint my bagels with. This will also help my spice mix stick to the bagels. After the bagels are coated and spiced, bake them for 20 to 25 minutes. So the bagels are decidedly brown and not black. However, they did taste good. And I think the real triumph here is the goth everything bagel spice blend, which I definitely just want to keep in my pantry. If you wanted to make a truly black bagel, you'd probably have more success with activated charcoal powder or dark soy sauce or squid ink. You could even take some food coloring and mix it with a little vodka and paint the dough before you bake it. But you know, I'm still happy with what I did, and I think the real lesson of Everything Everywhere All at Once was that it's okay to make mistakes. So on that note, thank you for watching. Keep in touch and happy crafting.